They told me the place hadn't seen a living soul in over 50 years. The old Westbrook Asylum sat on the far edge of town, half swallowed by the forest, its brick walls crumbling under decades of neglect. Vines crawled up to broken windows, and the roof sagged like the building itself had grown tired of standing. By the time I got the demolition contract, it was nothing more than a ghost of its former self. I was told to clear it completely, every wall, every floor, every locked door. The foreman's voice stuck in my head as he handed me the keys. If any rooms are sealed, don't go breaking them open right away. We'll take care of it later. I asked him what he meant, but he just shrugged and muttered something about bad memories. The first day passed quietly enough. Dust, debris, the usual work. But late in the afternoon, I found it a narrow hallway I hadn't seen on the floor plan. At the end of it stood a single heavy door, its paint flaking, its number plate hanging by one screw. Room 6B. It was locked. Not rusted shut, not jammed from years of decay. Locked, as if someone on the other side had only just turned the key. I pressed my ear to the wood. At first, there was nothing but silence, and then, a faint, deliberate sound. 3 slow knocks. I stepped back, heart pounding, telling myself it was the building settling. But the knocks came again, louder this time, and that was when I noticed the sound wasn't echoing through the hallway. It was coming from just inches away, on the other side of that door. I haven't told anyone this before. Not my coworkers, not my family, not the guys I drink with after a long shift. I guess part of me thought that if I didn't say it out loud, it would stay locked up in my head, where it couldn't hurt me. But the problem is, it's still there. It's still with me. And lately, I think keeping it to myself is making it worse. So I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't try to explain it away. I think you're the kind of person who's seen strange things, too. Maybe not exactly like what I went through, but enough to know when something's wrong in a way you can't fix with logic. Enough to know that sometimes, when you get too close to certain places, they don't just let you walk away clean. Promise me something before I start. Promise you won't try to find it. Don't go looking for Westbrook. Don't search for that room. If you ever find yourself in a building that feels wrong in your bones, where the silence is too heavy, where the shadows seem to wait for you to blink, turn around and leave. Don't think you'll be the one to figure it out. Places like that, they figure you out. Instead, the asylum job should have been easy. I've done demolition work for years. You walk in, you take things apart, piece by piece. You load up the debris, you move on to the next place. But Westbrook wasn't like any other job I've had. There was something about the air in that building. It had that smell old hospitals get a mix of mildew, rust, and something faintly sweet, like fruit that's gone just past ripe. But underneath it was another scent, metallic and sharp, that made the back of my throat sting. And it was cold in there. Not the kind of cold that comes from drafts or busted windows. This was deep, still cold, the kind that seems to come from the walls themselves. We had power in most of the building, thanks to a portable generator, but no heat and no cell signal. The others on the crew didn't seem to mind, but I felt it immediately, like the place was holding its breath, waiting. I kept thinking about the foreman's warning. If any rooms are sealed, don't go breaking them open right away. He hadn't said why, and I hadn't asked. That's one of the rules of this job. You don't dig into the history, unless you want to bring it home with you. But the first time I walked past the hallway that led to 6B, I felt it. You know how sometimes you pass by a dark alley, and your body just tenses, like your instincts know before your brain does. That's how it was. The air in that hallway was heavier, thicker, as if the temperature dropped just stepping into it. I told myself it was just a weird pocket in the ventilation, except there was no ventilation. The ceiling vents were sealed. No airflow. No reason for the shift. And the door at the end. I can't explain it. but I knew before I even touched it that someone had been on the other side. Not 50 years ago, but recently. The paint was chipped, but the lock looked new. There were faint scratches near the handle, like someone had fumbled a key in a hurry. The first day, I heard the knocks. I thought maybe one of the crew had gotten stuck in there, but when I went to check, the hallway was empty. I waited a while, then pressed my ear to the wood, and that's when I heard the second set of knocks, slow and deliberate. Not frantic, not asking for help, just letting me know they knew I was there. I walked away. I told myself I was imagining it. But that night, back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the sound, the rhythm of it, how it didn't echo like normal knocks should. The next morning, I told one of the guys about it. He just laughed and said, "Oh, you heard 6B? Don't worry about it. It's just the building creaking." But there was something in his voice, a hesitation, like he didn't believe his own words. That was when I realized the others had heard it too, and they were choosing not to talk about it. I don't know why I'm telling you all this now. Maybe it's because I've been carrying it around for too long. Maybe it's because lately, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the knocks again. Only now, they're not coming from the asylum. They're closer. Sometimes I hear them from my kitchen. Sometimes from the bathroom when the lights are out. And once, I swear to you, I heard them from inside my bedroom wall. I've moved twice since the job ended. It doesn't matter. That sound comes with me. I've started keeping a notebook, writing down the times and places I hear it, but there's no pattern, no logic. That's why I'm telling you this, not because I think you can help me, but because I need someone else to carry at least a piece of it. If you've ever heard a sound you can't explain, if you've ever felt something following you long after you left the place it started, maybe you understand. But if you don't, if none of this makes sense to you, then keep it that way. Don't get curious. Don't try to debunk it. And for the love of God, if you ever find yourself in front of a locked door in a place that should be empty, don't knock, even if it knocks first. The thing about places like Westbrook is that they were never meant to be inviting. Even when it was operational, I can't imagine anyone walked through those gates without feeling something sink inside their chest. The main building loomed, in a way that wasn't just big, it was imposing. The brick was a deep, weather-worn red, darkened in places where the rain had streaked down for decades, leaving stains like old tears. Tall, narrow windows were set too high on the walls, as if designed to let light in but not let anyone see out. Inside, the air was still and heavy. Dust clung to every surface. Even the shafts of light that broke through cracked windows seemed muted, dim, like the building swallowed brightness before it could reach the floor. The sound of our boots echoed too far, like the hallways stretched on longer than they should. I'd been told that the asylum had been shut down abruptly in the late 60s, but no one seemed to agree on why. Some said it was a funding issue. Others whispered about incidents, patients disappearing, orderlies quitting without notice. Strange illnesses that only affected those working in certain wards. On my second day, one of the older guys on the crew told me a story over lunch. He said his uncle had been a security guard there for 2 years before the closure. According to him, there was a wing that even the doctors avoided. Patients there didn't scream or lash out. They just sat in their rooms, eyes fixed on the far wall, whispering to something no one else could see. And then one day, the entire wing was cleared, the doors locked, and the hallway boarded up. 6B was in that wing, he said, chewing slowly. He wouldn't look at me when he said it. I started paying closer attention after that. The more time I spent inside, the more I noticed small, unsettling details. In the East Ward, every clock I saw on walls, on desks, even one in a drawer, was stopped at 3:17. No batteries, no mains connection, just frozen hands, all pointing to the same moment in the south corridor. The bird song from outside would cut out completely whenever you stepped inside, not fade, Not lessen, just stop. Like someone had hit a mute button on the world. You'd step back into the previous hallway, and the sound would return instantly. Sharp and jarring after the silence. The reflections were the worst. The bathrooms still had mirrors, though most were clouded with grime. In one near the main lobby, I wiped away a patch of dirt, just to see if it was salvageable. My reflection looked back at me, tired, dusty, exactly as I expected. But just as I turned to leave, I caught movement in the corner of the glass. Something tall, thin, standing at the end of the hallway behind me. I spun around, but the corridor was empty. When I looked back into the mirror, the spot where it had been was just a stretch of shadowed floor. I told myself it was a trick of the light. The building was full of shadows, full of shapes you could mistake for people if you stared too long. But from that moment on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not in the obvious way, no footsteps behind me, no sudden noises, but in that subtle, prickling way where the hairs on your neck rise without you knowing. Why, by the fourth day, I'd learned the layout well enough to move around without needing the old floor plans. That's how I found myself passing the 6B hallway more often. I never meant to, but I started noticing things there too. The dust in the hallway was always disturbed. Not much, just faint scuffs on the floor, as if someone had walked there recently. Once the doorknob on 6B was warm to the touch. Even though the entire building was frigid, I tried to bring it up to the others casually, but they shut me down quickly. "Don't overthink it," one said, and walked away before I could ask more. Another just muttered, "Some doors stay shut for a reason." That was all I got. Still, the place pulled at me. You ever stand on the edge of a cliff and feel that strange, terrifying urge to step forward, even though you know you shouldn't? That's what 6B felt like. Every time I passed it, that urge was stronger. On the 5th day, something happened that I can't explain. I'd been clearing out one of the upper wards with 2 other guys when we heard what sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor. Heavy, scraping, deliberate. It came from directly below us. We looked at each other, grabbed our flashlights, and went down to check. The noise stopped the moment we reached the lower hallway. That hallway led to 6B. There was no furniture in that section, just the locked door at the end. We stood there for a long moment, waiting, listening. The silence was so complete, it felt unnatural, pressing against our ears. And then, faintly, I heard it, a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but it was rhythmic, steady, like someone repeating the same phrase over and over. The others claimed they didn't hear it, but the way they hurried to leave told me they had. After that, I started having trouble sleeping. Not just at the motel where we were staying for the job, but even when I went home for the weekend. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, certain I'd heard knocking somewhere nearby, and always, in my dreams, there was the same image. A long, narrow hallway with a single door at the end. The same door I'd been walking past for days. I think the turning point happened on the 7th day. By then, I'd convinced myself the strangest thing about Westbrook was the atmosphere, the heavy air, the stopped clocks, the unsettling silence in certain halls. But that morning, I realized it was worse than that. The building wasn't just empty. It was waiting. We were clearing the old records room when the first knock came. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, like a knuckle striking wood. Everyone froze, looking toward the hallway. A second knock followed, slower. A third. The sound came from the direction of 6B, one of the crew. A guy named Harris sighed and muttered, "Not again." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and went back to work. We all tried to ignore it, but the knocks didn't stop. They came at steady intervals. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. By the time lunch rolled around, the sound had stopped, but something about it stuck with me. It wasn't random. There was a rhythm to it, like someone was signaling. That night, Back at the motel, I dreamed of the hallway again, only this time, I wasn't standing outside the door. I was inside the room. It was pitch black. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face, but I could hear breathing, slow, steady, inches from where I stood. When I woke, my phone was on the nightstand, screen lit up, recording a voice memo. I never started it. The file was less than a minute long. When I played it back, I heard 3 slow knocks, followed by a faint whisper I couldn't understand. The next morning, I told myself I was overleered, that I must have rolled onto my phone in my sleep, but the timing was too perfect. By the 9th day, more things started happening. Doors we'd locked the night before would be standing wide open in the morning. We blamed it on bad latches, but the locks themselves weren't broken. Sometimes we'd find tools missing from where we'd left them, only to show up in another part of the building hours later, or not at all. The scariest was the east stairwell. It had been chained off since the first day. The steps were unstable, and we weren't supposed to use them. But one morning, I found the chain neatly coiled on the floor, the padlock hanging open. I leaned over the railing and looked down. The air was colder than the rest of the building, and for a moment, I swore I saw someone standing on the landing below, tall, still, watching. When I blinked, they were gone. The whispers came next. At first, I thought it was just the sound of the wind through cracks in the walls. But wind doesn't form words, and these whispers did. They were faint, just on the edge of hearing, but I recognized the pattern, the same rhythm I'd heard in my dream. One afternoon, while I was sweeping debris from a hallway near 6B, I heard my name, clear as day. I turned, thinking one of the crew had called me, but the hallway was empty. My radio was silent. When I looked back toward the door, the knob was slowly turning, just enough to make a soft click. I didn't stick around after that. The nights became worse. I'd wake at 3:17 a.m., the time on all those frozen clocks, and hear knocking from somewhere in my motel room. Sometimes it came from the bathroom. Once, it came from inside the closet. Always 3 knocks, always followed by that whisper. I still couldn't make out. I started avoiding 6B during the day, but it didn't matter. The building seemed to know where I was. One morning, I came in early to get a head start on the work. The others hadn't arrived yet, and the halls were dead silent. I was halfway down the main corridor when I heard the unmistakable sound of furniture being dragged across the floor above me. I froze. The room above me was in the sealed wing. No one was supposed to be there. The sound stopped abruptly. Then came the knocks 3, then a pause, then 3 more, from directly overhead. I left the building and waited outside until the crew showed up. I didn't tell them why. By day 12 my nerves were shot. I'd started seeing things in my peripheral vision, shapes that vanished when I turned my head, shadows where there shouldn't be any. I told myself it was the stress, the bad sleep, but that didn't explain what happened that afternoon. I was working in one of the upper wards when I heard my radio crackle. A voice came through faint, distorted. It said my name, followed by the same whisper I'd been hearing in my dreams. My stomach dropped. The others were working on the opposite side of the building, and none of them sounded like that voice. I turned off the radio, but the whisper didn't stop. It was coming from right behind me. When I spun around, the hallway was empty, but the door to 6B was there, only it couldn't have been. 6B was on the lower floor, at the end of its own hallway. Yet somehow, in that moment, I was standing just feet from it. I didn't open it. I couldn't. But I knew then that avoiding it was useless. Whatever was inside wasn't bound to that hallway anymore. It could find me anywhere in the building, maybe even outside of it. That night, I dreamed of the room again. Only this time, I could make out shapes in the dark, tall, thin figures, lining the walls, their heads all turned toward me. The breathing was louder, and then I realized the knocks weren't coming from a wall or a door. They were coming from inside my own chest. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My phone was recording again. This time, when I played it back, I understood the whisper it was saying, "Let me out." It was the 13th day when I stopped pretending I was just imagining things. We were supposed to be clearing out one of the admin offices on the ground floor, sorting through rusted filing cabinets and stacks of old patient charts. I'd been working alone in the far corner, pulling drawers free and stacking them on the floor, when I noticed one of the floorboards sagged slightly under my weight. At first, I thought it was just rot, but when I crouched down for a better look, I saw a seam, the faint outline of a panel cut into the wood. It wasn't obvious. You'd have to be standing right over it to notice. The edges were worn smooth, like they'd been opened many times, long ago. There was no lock, just a shallow indentation where a handle might have been. I wedged the claw of my hammer under the edge and pried it up. The board came free with a long, dry creak. Inside was a narrow cavity, lined with dust. At first I thought it was empty. Then my flashlight caught the corner of something wrapped in faded cloth. I reached in and pulled it out. The fabric crumbled in my hands, revealing a small, leather-bound journal. The cover warped with age and moisture. The first few pages were blank, but as I flipped through, the handwriting began, small, cramped, written in black ink that had faded to brown. The earliest entries were dated 1958. The author never signed their name, but from the details, references to my patients, mentions of rounds, I guessed it belonged to a staff member, a doctor, maybe. The first entries were clinical, noting symptoms and treatments, but after a dozen pages, the tone shifted. There were references to the room, always written in capital letters, like a proper noun. The room continues to affect the others. One entry read, "Even those who have not entered can hear it now." Later entries were darker. 3 knocks again, just after lights out. All doors locked. No one in the corridor. Patient. 12B refuses to eat. Says the whispers are in the food. By the last month of entries, the handwriting had grown shaky, erratic. Words slanted off the lines, sometimes running into one another. The room will not be silent. It knows my name now. Faces in the reflection, not mine, not anyone's I recognize. They want to open it. I told them it cannot be opened. If they open it, it will not stay here. The final page was just a single sentence, written in jagged, uneven strokes. If you hear the knocks, it's already too late. I don't know how long I sat there, just holding the journal. The air in the office felt heavier, colder. When I finally stood, I noticed something I hadn't before, faint scratches along the wall behind the desk, almost hidden beneath peeling paint. I brushed the surface with my sleeve, flaking away the paint until the scratches formed letters. A message carved deep into the plaster. Don't answer the door. That afternoon, I didn't tell anyone about the journal. I slipped it into my bag and kept it with me. That night, back at the motel, I read through it again, slower this time. There was a section near the middle that made my skin crawl. The author described standing outside the door to the room. I realized now that was 6B, and hearing a voice from the other side. It called to them by name, said it needed help, said it was cold, alone, starving. The author wrote that the voice matched someone they knew, another doctor who had gone missing a year earlier. They never found his body. The entry read, but if that was him in there, then it was only his voice, and the voice knew things it shouldn't. The more I read, the more I understood. The room wasn't just a place. It was something alive, in its own way, and it was patient. The dreams changed after that. I no longer stood in darkness. Now there was light, a sickly yellow light flickering from a single bulb in the ceiling. The figures along the walls were clearer. They were people, or had been once. Their skin stretched thin, eyes too large. Their lips moved in perfect unison, whispering the same words over and over. Let me out. In the dream I stepped toward the door, But it wasn't me moving. Something was pulling me forward, one step at a time. My hand reached for the knob. That's when I woke, standing in my motel room, my fingers wrapped around the doorknob to the hallway. I stopped sleeping after that dot. On the 15th day, the building itself seemed different. The hallways didn't feel like they led to the same places. A corridor I'd walked a dozen times would suddenly feel longer, stretched, the end further away than it should be. Sometimes I'd take a turn and end up somewhere that didn't match the floor plans, and 6B was everywhere. I'd turn a corner, and there it would be, the same door, at the same angle, even if I was on a different floor. Sometimes the brass number plate was tarnished and dull. Sometimes it gleamed like it had just been polished. That afternoon, I couldn't help it. I reached out. My fingers brushed the wood, and it was warm. I heard the whisper again, not muffled this time, but clear, like the speaker was inches from my ear. "I've been waiting for you." I stumbled back, heart pounding, and nearly tripped over something in the hall, a chair. Only there hadn't been a chair there when I came in. It faced a door, positioned like someone had been sitting and waiting for it to open. That's when I realized the journal had never said the door couldn't be opened. It had said it shouldn't be. But I also realized something else. The knocks weren't trying to get someone's attention on the outside. They were counting down. I told myself I was going to leave on the 16th day. No more delays, no more pretending I could finish the job. I'd pack my tools, get in my truck, and never look back. It should have been simple. The crew was running late, so I was the first one in. The front doors groaned when I pushed them open, and the air inside was stale. Still, I kept my eyes forward, refusing to glance toward the hall that led to 6B. I told myself I just had to make it to the exit on the other side, the one that led straight to the parking lot. But the building didn't agree. Every turn I took, every hallway I walked, ended the same way, with that door waiting at the far end. I'd backtrack, take another route, but it didn't matter. The corridors stretched in unnatural ways, bending space, bending logic. It was like trying to escape a dream that didn't want to end. By the fourth time I found myself facing 6B. I stopped pretending it was coincidence. The building wasn't letting me go. I thought about calling someone, but I knew how that would go. No service inside the asylum. Always no signal. No matter where you stood, even if I could call, what would I say? The hallway keeps moving. The knocks started then, soft at first. 3, pause. 3, pause, but growing louder with each cycle. They weren't muffled anymore. The sound reverberated through the air, vibrating in my ribs. Then the whisper came. "Please, it's so dark. Just open the door." I backed away, heart pounding, but my feet moved wrong. I wasn't retreating, I was stepping forward. The distance between me and the door closed in uneven lurches, like the floor was tilting, pulling me toward it. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was gripping the journal in one hand. The last page flashed in my mind. If you hear the knocks, it's already too late. I don't remember deciding to run, but suddenly I was moving, tearing down a hallway that shouldn't have led anywhere, and yet, there was the stairwell. I bolted down, ignoring the creak of each step, ignoring the flicker of movement in the shadows below. The ground floor looked wrong. The windows were black, as if the world outside had been erased. Every exit door I tried was locked, not with chains or bolts, but with something invisible. Like the air itself had hardened into glass. The knocking followed me, echoing from every direction. I turned a corner and froze. There was the front lobby, and at the center of it, impossibly, was 6B. The same door, standing alone, not connected to any wall, just there, upright, in the middle of the floor. The handle turned on its own. Something inside was breathing. I told myself not to go closer, not to look. But the truth is, part of me wanted to. Not because I believed there was someone to save, but because I thought, maybe if I saw it, I'd understand. I took one step, then another. The door swung open without a sound. The room beyond wasn't a room at all. It was endless black, deeper than any darkness I'd ever seen. My eyes couldn't adjust to it. There was no floor, no ceiling, just the feeling of space that went on forever. And in that space, shapes moved. They weren't human, not anymore, but they were watching me. Every head turned in perfect unison. Their mouths opened, and the whisper came again, but now I could hear the real voice beneath it. It was mine. I stumbled back, but the floor behind me was gone. My heel slipped over the edge into nothingness. Something cold brushed my arm, not grabbing, just inviting. I think I screamed. I'm not sure. I remember slamming the door and finding myself in the hallway again. This time, the exit was there, exactly where it should have been. When I stepped outside, the air felt wrong. Too warm, too still. My truck was in the lot, but the lot wasn't the same. The road beyond curved in the wrong direction. The trees leaned in, their branches bending toward me. I drove anyway. I didn't care where the road led. I didn't look back. But here's the thing. I've checked the maps since then, dozens of times. The road I took doesn't exist. And some nights, when I'm lying in bed, I wake at 3:17 a.m. to find the journal on my nightstand, even though I burned it. And from somewhere inside my apartment, 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. I haven't been able to sleep since. Not really. I can close my eyes, sure, but the kind of rest I used to have, the kind where you forget yourself for a few hours, that's gone. I lie there and try to focus on my breathing, try to block out the world, but then it starts again. 3 knocks, 3 more. It doesn't matter where I am, my apartment, a hotel, once even in my car during a long drive when I pulled over to nap. It's always the same pattern, the same rhythm, the same pause in between, like it's letting me know it could keep going forever, but it doesn't have to. It's patient. I've moved twice since the asylum, changed jobs, got rid of anything that could tie me to that place, clothes, tools, even the truck I drove back then. None of it made a difference. The knocks always find me. Some nights, I hear a whisper after the last knock. It's quiet enough that I could convince myself it's the wind or my own thoughts. But deep down, I know better. It's my own voice, coming from somewhere just beyond the walls, saying my name. Not asking for help anymore, just reminding me it's there. The thing is, I don't think it wants me to open the door anymore. I think it already has me. Maybe it always did, from the first time I walked into that building. Maybe all the doors I've opened in my life were just leading to this. I've thought about going back. I know that sounds insane, but sometimes, when you live long enough with something like this, it feels worse not to face it, like avoiding. It is just giving it more room to grow inside you. But I won't, because I don't think I'd come out again. Not in a way that you'd recognize. If you've listened this far, you're probably wondering why I'm telling you all this. Maybe I just need someone else to carry it for a while. Or maybe, and I'm sorry for this, maybe I'm passing it along. Sometimes I think that's how it works. Not by touch, not by being in the same place, but by knowing, by having the shape of it in your head. If you ever find yourself somewhere old, somewhere abandoned, and the air feels too still, like it's holding its breath, leave. Don't explore. Don't listen for sounds that might not be there. And, for God's sake, if you ever find a door that seems out of place, with a handle that feels warm under your hand, walk away. I mean it. The worst part, I can't even tell you what's behind that door. I've seen glimpses, heard voices, but I don't think I've really seen it. And yet, it knows me. It's learning me. Every night I hear those knocks. I think it's one knock closer to whatever comes next. And when it does finally open, I'm not sure anyone will notice I'm gone. I think I'll still be here, walking around, talking, breathing, but it won't be me. If you take anything from this, take this. Burn the place. If you ever find it, don't hesitate. Don't try to understand. Just watch the fire and pray it's enough. Because if it's not, it'll find you too. And once it knows your name, there's no going back. If you've ever heard something you couldn't explain, a knock, a whisper, a voice calling your name when you were supposed to be alone, tell me. Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Not because I'm curious in the way you might think, but because I need to know I'm not the only one. And maybe, if we compare notes, we can figure out what this thing wants. Have you ever been in a place where the air felt wrong? Not cold or hot, but aware, like the walls were leaning closer just to hear you breathe. Have you ever walked past a closed door and felt the handle warming under your hand, like someone inside had been waiting for you? If you have, I need to hear your story. I'm not asking out of morbid fascination. I think these things, these places, they're connected. Maybe yours isn't an asylum. Maybe it's a basement, or a hallway that shouldn't exist, or a stairwell that goes down one floor too many. But the feeling's the same, and if you've heard the knocks, I'm sorry, so go ahead. Share what happened to you. Just do one thing for me before you hit post. Make sure you're alone, really alone. Check the corners of the room. Listen. If you hear anything, even the faintest tap, stop typing. Walk away. Because once it knows you're talking about it, it listens back.